Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's webcast, AutoCAD Electrical Interactive Single Line Diagrams. Our presenter today is Rick France. He's a solutions engineer with Hagerman & Company. Before we get started, I'll let you know that you're in listening only mode. If you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and they'll be addressed at the end of the presentation. As we close down the session today, you'll be prompted to fill out a survey, and we do ask that you take a few moments to fill that out. The webcast qualifies for one AIA continuing education credit, and if you would like to receive this credit, you can leave your AIA number on question 4 of our survey, and we'll enter that for you. Additionally, all registrants will receive a follow-up email containing a link for the recording of this presentation. With that, I will hand things over to Rick.
Well, hello everyone. I am going to go ahead and turn on my screen so everybody should be able to see my screen right now, and I've got AutoCAD Electrical 2018 opened up. Basically, we're going to be creating a single line diagram. I'm going to actually create it from scratch and show how to work it into a project where it works just like any other drawing and is part of the surfing, part of the bill of materials, that the product understands that for instance, I'm going to use this 3-phase motor right here, that the motor on the single line diagram is the exact same motor that's here on this 3-phase. This is the exact same one on the panel, and everything interacts the way it normally would between a ladder and a panel. It's just one more type of drawing that this is going to be working from. So I'm going to be creating the 3-phase that's on here. It's just a redacted, simplified version of a 3-phase motor that I use in my training class. It's basically got a circuit breaker that's a magnetic instantaneous on there. It's got the motor starter, which is also connected to another drawing ladder diagram, and the overload cable marker, and the fuse switch in the motor. Now the fuse switch is going to be a custom piece, because that's the reason I chose a fuse switch instead of a fuse. In real life, I probably would put a fuse in this situation, but I use the fuse switch because there's not a fuse switch in the single line diagram, and I can kind of show you what is necessary to create a custom symbol for one line diagrams. So that is why I chose the fuse switch. We're going to use the circuit builder to create the 3-phase. So we'll get into a little bit about the circuit builder. And because of that fuse switch, I'll have to put in a custom line in the circuit builder, which I will point out. It's already there in my computer. I'm just going to show you what I did. And then I'll also just show you, because there's a little bit of difference between using the circuit builder and doing a single line. So I'll use the single line to show the power supply, the icon menu one line components, to add the power supply and the circuit breaker. And I'll throw in a transformer just to show how those link up a little bit different than when you're working with the circuit builder, because there's 2 different methods there in the madness of how these things hook up. First thing I'm going to do is create a drawing. I know everyone here probably knows how to do that already, but the reason I'm doing this is because I am going to be using a different template than I normally would for a schematic ladder diagram, which I'll show that in a minute, what's different about the template. It's very minor, but if I hit the browse button, you can see I have a ladder template and a one-line template. They're just minorly different, but I do want to be able to point that out. So that's the reason I'm actually creating this from scratch here. And it's going to be part of operator station 1, and it's going to be the motor control and supplies, but instead of 3-phase, we'll work on it that way. So pretty much single line diagrams are just part of your project. I'm putting it in a folder called single line diagrams, and it's no different than any other drawing outside of the template itself. Now here's why one of the things about the template that I always try to stress. One of the things, as you see in this 3-phase, is I'm using a vertical ladder. If I looked at one of my other schematic diagrams, they are vertical also. When I do a single line, I prefer a horizontal ladder. So there's going to be a difference in the ladder settings. Because of that, I normally do not do my project defaults to single line diagrams. They're the only drawings I don't copy my project defaults to that I handle manually. So I'm going to say no to that question. So again, if I was to look at one of these schematic diagrams up here in the drawing properties, on the drawing format, you can see this is a vertical ladder. I've got a spacing of 1 inch, but that's not as important as the vertical ladder bit. Everything else, if you looked at any other setting, is going to be identical to my single line as far as those the way it numbers the wires and stuff like that, because there are no wire numbers in a single line, so that's not an issue. But as far as the way it numbers components and things, the difference is the fact that I'm using a horizontal ladder here instead of a vertical ladder. So that's the only difference between those two drawings, and I'm letting my template control that because I have that already set up on the template, that it's already set to a horizontal. And as you can see, it's also set to a 2-inch spacing. So if I would have copied the project defaults, those two items would have gotten overwritten. I'd have to come in here every time and change it. So that's why I don't copy the project defaults. Outside of that though, the templates are identical, save for one other thing. If I was to look at one of these ladder drawings and go to my wire types, you can see I've got some wire types in here that were created that get wire numbering and things like that. In a single line diagram, you have one wire type, and that is named 1-. It's automatic. You can not even have it in your template. It will create it. It will make it to set it to no wire numbering, so it will handle it for you. Only reason I like to have it in my template is for setting the color, because I make mine red. So I use it to set the color. I already have it in the template, and I already have it in the template set as my default wire. Outside of that, though, that's the only wire that's necessary, and it will default to that and use that particular wire no matter what anyways. As soon as I start putting in one line components, it will create it. I just want my main bus to also be the same thing. So that's the main two things that are different about my template. There's one other thing I'll show you in a minute that's different about my template, but it's very, very minor, because there's two ways I could get a ladder. I could get the start out with my wire diagram here. One is I could use just a regular ladder. Now, if I was not going to be doing my single line diagrams, connecting them up to where it's using the same exact circuit here and the same exact overload here, if I wasn't going to make them the same one with the same numbers, then I probably would want to put in a ladder. And some people do it this way. Also, for instance, I've been at companies before where we didn't do ladder diagrams. We did just single line diagrams. In the event of how I'm doing a single line diagrams, well, that kind of blows the idea of interactive ones outside of connecting them to a panel. But at that point, I would want to do a ladder so that I get numbers in there. And so I would just basically do a normal ladder, give it the rungs and the start point. I usually do it with no rungs, that type thing, and place it in my drawing. I'm going to say 2,20 and get it in there. And what I usually would do is just trim this wire out right here. Like that. And that's the way I would start it out without putting the wire numbers in there, because I don't need rung numbers for this thing since it's going to be inheriting everything If you look here, there's additional templates down here, and there's my 1-1, which is my single line templates. So this way I'm getting the correct template. It's going to be a vertical parent. It's going to be a fuse. I already knew that from the name because these will follow the same naming convention that you use for any other schematic symbol. So V for vertical, FU for fuse, and then one normally open, or one parent, one normally open. And then after that, the underscore, you can name it whatever you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and open this symbol up. And by using that template, you can see everything that is required is in here already. In addition, I've set up the wires and everything. So all this is identical to any other symbol. Now, I did it with a width, a polyline width here because the ones out of the box have that. I think it's like a polyline width, the line work of 0.01. It's not real big, but they did that with their symbols out of the box. So I wanted mine to look the same, so I created mine with the same width, just like their symbols out of the box. It's not really necessary other than making it to where they look the same and everything. Outside of that, you just basically set up the attributes just like you would in any other symbol. Because of that, I'm not going to go into any details about all that. There's one attribute in here that's in this one that's not in the template at all. That was the contact one. That one is in here because it controls normally open. In there, it would be in a regular symbol if it's normally open, normally closed. You would have that attribute also in there. It just is not in the single line one template, so I had to add that manually. So I added that one in there, but the main one is this one here called the WD type. This is the one that does all the magic that tells it it's a single line symbol. And as you can see over here, WD type is set to 1-. On a normal schematic symbol, you do not have to have the WD type attribute in there. It could be, if it is included, it can be set to blank, or it would be set to nothing, no value. When it's in a drawing and it's set to a value of 1-, that tells the software that this is a single line, one line component. If it was set to, I can't remember all of them, but there's a one for pneumatic, I think that's P and U or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. It would be a pneumatic symbol. There's one for hydraulics, HYD, I believe, for that. I use P2P for point-to-point symbols. So this attribute is valuable to tell the software that this is not a normal ladder diagram schematic symbol. This is a special symbol. Because of that, that tells the software that this is the exact same symbol that's on the other drawing. It's just it's not a duplicate. Otherwise, if I gave them the same tags, it would say you got duplicate tags in your project. You got two fuse switches in your project that are both have the same tag. It's going to freak out, give you all kinds of little error messages and stuff. This is what allows the software to understand that this fuse switch on this drawing is the single line version of the fuse switch on my other schematic or the fuse switch on my panel drawing. So that is the important feature of your symbol. I could basically take any symbol out of the box, add that attribute and with a value of 1-, and it would be a single line, one line component symbol as far as the software is concerned. So that is what does the magic for the symbol. I'm going to go ahead and close it. Outside of that, there's nothing special about it. I'm not going to override it or save it. Now, since I'm going to be using the circuit builder to do that, what was in that three-phase motor circuit, since I'm going to use that, the circuit builder out of the box does not know anything about a fuse switch for one-line drawings because it doesn't exist out of the box. So I need to add that to the circuit builder. So that's why this is why the circuit builder was in that part of the description of one of the things we're going to be covering. So here I'm going to go to my catalogs, where I keep my custom stuff, and open up the circuit builder. Basically, if you've never opened up this file, it's just an Excel file. It's called ace_circuit_builder. When you're in it, you can see it's got a 3-phase vertical, 3-phase horizontal tab. There's my single-phase vertical, my single-phase horizontal, and of course my one-line vertical and my one-line horizontal. I'm going to be doing a vertical, so that's where I did the adding to this file. You can see this has basically got a lot of description stuff. It almost looks like a programming language. I couldn't find, when I first did this, and I haven't seen lately, any kind of anything out there in the world that told you how this file is formatted. What it is pretty much a look at it and figure it out type thing. So I knew I needed to add that fuse switch under the safety disconnect section. You'll see that in a little bit, how I did that. That was when I was using the circuit builder. I knew this is where I wanted it in my circuit. So basically what I did here was I inserted a blank line between none and disconnect switch, which is the out of the box. And so what you see in orange, I basically copied everything from here over to the end, pasted it below it, and then tried to figure out what needed to be changed. I just threw a dart. I got it right the first time, because when you start looking at this, it kind of starts to make sense. I needed this to say fuse switch, because this one was a fuse switch. This was the part that was actually the hardest to figure out, was what to put there. And basically what I did was I saw up here they had 1, 2, 4, and then 0. So I just followed the same format. Since this one was called 2, I went, okay, I'll call mine 4. So I just basically typed 4 into both those areas and figured I'd see what happened. This line here is exactly duplicate. The only difference is the name of my symbol right there. Vertical fuse 11_1-SW. So that's the exact name of the fuse switch that I just opened up a minute ago and showed you in the symbol builder. So I just changed it from this one to this one as far as the symbol name. After that, nothing else changed anywhere till you got down here at the end, family code, fuse switch. So it's pretty simple to add this line in there and get it in there. I just added that in there, went to the circuit builder where we're headed next. It worked. I've used it ever since. So it's just basically coming in here and kind of figuring out what this file was looking for to be able to do this. So I'm going to close that. Outside of that one line, that file is out of the box. So we're going to go to the circuit builder. Right here is the vertical FVNR non-reversing, and that's what the type of a motor that I'm going to be putting in there. And I'm going to start by configuring it. So we'll go to configure, and I'm going to place it right here in that part of the single line on the bus. I'm going to give it a name so that I can use this over and over again. I'm going to call mine my air fan motor, because this is going to be, I've got a primary air fan motor, a tertiary air fan motor, and a secondary air fan motor. This is going to be my standard air fan motor that I'm going to use over and over again. And once I create this thing, it will remember it job after job after job. Now, here you can see this starts out on the motor setup. If I was doing this, the version where I'm not connecting it up to my other drawing, and I have the rung numbers up here, so that's going to be assigning my numbers and everything, I would need to fill out any information here throughout this particular configuration process that I want to put in here. Now I can fill it out here, or I can fill it out after the fact using edit component. They'll both do it. By doing it here, though, it will get saved with this, and I won't have to keep doing it over and over again, because it will be all saved with it, which including your manufacturer and catalog information. In this particular case, since I am connecting it up with a completed 3-phase motor, I'm not going to need to fill out any of this information. It will pull it over from the drawing when I get to that point. So I'm just going to leave this blank. Go onto the motor symbol here. Yes, it's a 3-phase motor. As you can see here, I can put in manufacturing catalog information by clicking that button with the little magnifying glass on it. And again, it would save it to the air fan motor that I'm creating here. But that's already done in my other drawing. Why duplicate work? Why do it twice? I'm going to be using the information I get from the other drawings. So 3-phase motor, disconnecting means, if you remember, I had a circuit breaker that was magnetic instantaneous. My motor starter, yes, I had one. I did not include a power factor connection capacitor. I did have an overload that was thermal. I didn't have a terminal strip on it, but I did have cable markers. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it yes for the cable marker. And the safety disconnect at the load. There's that fuse switch that I added to the Excel file. And it's only there because I put it in that Excel file. So this is what is reading that Excel file to create these different elements for the different types of circuits that you're going to build from here. So there's my fuse switch. Again, I didn't bother filling out anything because I don't like to do duplicate work. There's no reason to. So once you have it configured here, basically I'm going to come down here, doing the insert all elements, which is that third one right there. It adds in the symbols, and once I've done that part, I can hit done, and there's my symbols placed in there, and there's the fuse switch that I created in the other one. Now I've got the question marks here because right now it doesn't know what the rung number is because I didn't include that since this was not done as a ladder. This was just a wire. It's going to pull that from the other drawing. To save myself some time, I'm going to go ahead and put in the secondary and the tertiary. At this point, when I go back to the circuit builder, I can hit the little default right here. There's the air fan motor I just created. So I can just insert it. Go right back to the circuit builder, grab another air fan motor, hit the insert, and there you go. I've got all 3 of them in there. They just need to be connected at this point. To connect them when you place them this way through the circuit builder, basically right click, go to edit component at 12 o'clock, and this is the main thing you would do just to connect them up is we're going to use this schematic button right here. You hit schematic. There's all the circuit breakers I have in my project. There's my primary air fan motor disconnect on the 3-phase, which is on sheet 1. That's the one I'm going to connect up to. Right here, you'll see in the very first time you open this up, you have to set this each drawing session. What you want to get from the other drawing, I'm going to use all of the above and just go ahead and pull over all the catalog values, all the installation codes, all the ratings, everything, descriptions I want to pull over. At that point, I can hit copy tag. Yes, overwrite this bogus one here. And you can see it put in the same tag that's on that sheet 1, which is circuit breaker 105A. Pulled in every piece of information, including the item number. Everything came over. It's now got the exact same information. As far as the product's concerned, this is the same circuit breaker that's on the other drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And I know you don't want to sit here and watch me go through that one with each one for the next couple of minutes. So let me explain a couple of things while I'm doing this and let you see that it's not really that it's time consuming to do this. It's kind of a little monotonous because it's just hitting these one right after another and grabbing each one. But once I've set that up to have those defaults of all of the above, it remembers that and it will just keep going over and over again. Again, I close AutoCAD Electrical, I reopen it tomorrow morning or after lunch, that box will be unchecked. So every time I open this up, every drawing session, I'm going to have to make sure all of the above has been checked that very first time. But after that, for the day, I'm pretty much set, and I can just sit here and go through and link these things up as necessary. Now, the cable marker, I'm going to save and do it last along with the motor. Reason being is those two work a little bit different than any other of the components. And it's very minor what's different, but I always like to point it out. So we'll do those two last. We'll just go ahead and get these fuse switches. But you can see it takes a little effort in linking them together because you have to tell the product, you know, what it's connected to in the project. But once you get them linked up, they're set. And it's not too terribly difficult, just a little time consuming. All right, the cable markers are a little bit different, not majorly. I'm going to go ahead and go to edit component. What you'll notice is there's not a schematic button. That's the only thing that's different. There's no schematic button. There's one that says tags used so far. That's it. You get tags used so far. Here's my primary air fan motor cable. Everything else is already checked. Copy tag and okay. So that one, as far as the cable marker, is just simply a different name for the button. The only thing I can tell you there is it's probably two different programmers. I have no explanation of why they use different button name, but the tags used so far button does the same thing as the schematic button on the cable markers. The motor, it's back to a schematic button, but the difference here is this dialog box right here, because the motor has an attribute in it called WD tag alt, because there's an alternate tag in the motor that's set up there, and that's for setting up peer-to-peer connections for coil pins and things like that. This is not a peer-to-peer connection, so I'm going to make it tag 1. And after that, it's the same thing. So it's just that one dialog box is different on the motor. We'll see the same thing when we do the power supply, and it's just because of that additional attribute that's in the symbol out of the box that allows it to do peer-to-peer connections, which we don't have. But we're synced up. We've got it all linked up. Now we'll come back here and we'll do a couple other things with it later, just to let you see how it's all synced up and everything. But first, what I want to do is go ahead and show you, in the event that you don't want to use Circuit Builder, or you're not using Circuit Builder, you don't have to. You can do this with the regular icon menu. I'm going to just draw a wire here. We'll put it about right there, and we'll just drop it right there. And I'll draw another wire here. So you can see I could draw these things with just normal wires, and I'm just kind of eyeballing to get to the same link there. When I go to the icon menu here, one-line components are right here. And you have to use these in the one line because the only difference is they have that WD type attribute in there. So therefore, set to 1- already, so therefore it understands it. Since there's a transformer right there, I'm just going to go ahead and grab that first just to show you, just like anything else, you just stick it in there. At this point, since I'm doing it one at a time, I've got the schematic button here. Hit the schematic button. There's the transformer that I'm going to connect it up to, copy tag. So it's basically very similar in the same thing. Now, because I'm going to be doing two circuits in a power supply here, I'm going to task it so that it will update everything. I don't have to do the tasking when I'm working with the circuit builder, but when I'm working with it one at a time, I'll have to task items. The circuit breakers are going to be under motor control. Here's a circuit breaker. I'm just going to place one about right there, and we'll connect it up to my power supply 1 circuit breaker. I meant to hit OK repeat and did not, so now I got to come back in here, and we'll connect that one up to power supply number 2. So we've got this in here. We're ready for the last thing, which is the power supply itself. Now there's not a power supply for one line out of the box, so I could create a custom piece. In lieu of that, though, what I usually do is go under miscellaneous here and just use a generic load. And I'm mainly doing this here at this point to show you that there is a difference when I'm doing something with that generic load box. But a lot of times on the single lines, that's what I'm going to use. The reason this is different is a generic load box defaults to device. Well, that covered it up. DV. Instead of a PS for power supply, it defaults to DV for device. Because of that, it can't find any DV tags in use, which is what it's filtering for. So I have to show all the components for all families. This would also come into play, for instance, this happens to be a JIS project. If this would have been an NFPA project, it's looking for the motor. The motors in the NFPA are MTR, but this goes off the MOT of JIS, so I'd have to do the same show all components. So this is not the only situation where you may have to use the show all components, but this shows every component in the entire project, so I can go find the one I want. To speed this up in real life, I probably would make my own power supply one line diagram to copy in, and you can see here it's using just like the motor. It has the alternate tag for the peer-to-peer. So in real life, I would probably have created myself a power supply so that I don't have to show all the components and search through them. But for this, I wanted to be able to show you what's going to happen if you are doing this on your own with the out of the box. So there's all I'm going to do as far as the single line diagram. You can see I can create it with a circuit builder. I can create it one by one. I know there's other devices that should be in here that are on the other drawing. I'm not going to worry about that. I don't want to bore you to death. Since I did everything by task manager, I'm going to run the project task right now. Go ahead, select all and say okay. I am one who likes to see project task ran quite often after I do something so there's no errors. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and click off the grid. There's the single line we're going to be we're producing. It's all linked up. If I come over here to this circuit breaker right here, and I right click and I say surf, there's the same circuit breaker on my three-phase drawing right there on rungs 5, 6, and 7. Can go right to it. It'll zoom to it. It understands those are the same circuit breaker. So it's all linked up correctly. If I can come over here to this motor starter, I'm going to surf on this motor starter. So here's this motor starter. There it is on the panel drawing, sheet 7. There's the auxiliary contact for the motor starter on sheet 2. There's the 3 motor starters here in this 3-phase. There's the single-phase motor starter parent, and there's my one-line version, all in the same project. So I could come over here, search to number 2. It's going to zoom in on that same motor starter. Right-click on it just to show you. I'm going to make this primary air fan number 1. It will update everything. It'll update the 3-phase, the panel drawing, the single line, all got updated with one change because they're now working interactive. It now understands these are all the same drawing. I'm just going to hang out, leave that one open for a minute to save some time. There you go. Oh, did I change a different one? I have never seen it do that before. Wouldn't you know it'd be right during a recording? So let me try something here and see what happened. Oh, that's the motor. No, skip. Okay, I just realized what I did. I looked at the circuit breaker and said the motor starter. It did change the motor starter. There it is right there. There you saw I changed the circuit breaker. If I went back to sheet 1 here, I just changed the circuit breaker here. So I actually did it both ways to show you that it works both ways. I changed it on the single phase. It works there. I was going to change the motor, the primary air fan back to out the number 1 to show you that, but I did it by accident that way. So I changed this to primary air fan number 2, which should have been number 1. It would then go and update the circuit breaker on the 3-phase. I'm just going to go ahead and remove that for now, and we'll task it because basically this should be primary air fan without the number 1, but everything is linked together. Everything is synced together. It's going to update. Whoops. It's going to update and fix every drawing because it now understands they're one and the same device. Just one more little thing about the single lines here. For instance, I'm going to go ahead and if you notice here, I'm going to turn on my layer that has my installation location code. So you can kind of see I've got a mixture. Here's a sub right, sub C, some that does, the transformer doesn't have it. Here's sub C on this. I can use the location boxes. I see these more often on a single line myself. So I'm going to go ahead and put a location box on this right here, and it will update everything accordingly, just like anything else. So I'm going to make this one sub right. We'll make it a location box of OS1. I don't like to force the invisible myself. For the box description, I'm going to use the installation location code here, but I also like a slash instead of a dash. And I want it to be on the left, so I could use the location box just like I would anywhere else. I use them more on one line than I do anyplace else. And again, it's going to go through the entire project and update this information as soon as I do that on every drawing. So if I came back over here to sheet 1, right here, and turned on my codes, you can see everything's been set. Sub R, OS1, that was in the location box because I did not have the cable marker, fuse switch, or motor in it, just these. But everything's linked together. Everything's interactive. Everything's working exactly like I would expect it to with my single line diagrams. That pretty much shows you how to use them, how to get them working within your project. By the way, you can use source and destination arrows to go from one to another, just like you would any place else. There's nothing different there. It just needs a unique code, just like it would any place else in your project. Any questions that I need to be looking at?
One question that was asked is it possible to make do this process in reverse, where you first create the single line diagrams and then use this data to create the 3-line diagrams?
Sure. If I come over here to the 3-phase here, you'll see I've got that same schematic box, and it will see the only differences. Well, I've got show all right now. Is because they're being used right now. I can't, once you use it, but here you see where it says show one line components. You would basically check that, hit freshen, and there's the one line components that are on the other drawing if they were not already connected. Since they're connected, it doesn't, I won't see that. But yeah, you would just create it on the one line side, then over here, and it's going to copy that same information. The only difference in that is normally, at least in the places I've worked in the past, I get my tagging for the component from my schematic, not from the single line. So usually that means you probably wouldn't want to set it up to where, well, you don't actually copy the tag at this point, but eventually you would want to copy the tags back over there. So it may take a little more work because it's really made to work from the schematic to the one line and not the other way. Same principle as why you normally work from schematic to panel. It will work from panel to schematic. It'll work from one line to schematic. There's just a few extra steps you're going to have to take because of tagging. Any other questions? Well, if there are no other, go ahead.
Sorry, the second question that just came in was, can you just copy the single lines you created so that you don't have to set it up and then just do the changes on the components? So I think
You mean, for instance, if I came over here, can I just do the copy circuit type thing? Is that what I'm assuming? I can use the copy circuit command on a circuit for a single line. There's one thing you need to be aware of, that if you do that when you copy it, that has come back to bite me too many times, and that is this box right here. Basically, actually, it's not this one. Let's see, retag all. Actually, this box used to not be there. This is a new one in 2018 to where you can retag all, so that it understands to retag these. In the previous versions from 2018, it would not give you that option. Well, it gave you that option, but it was worded strangely. And if you answered it wrong, it would basically, you'd wind up with 2 circuit breaker 115As. And once that happened, you try to set this one up to a different one, it would then do the same thing to that one. They became one and the same is what happened there. So it was pre-2018, it was worded different than retag all. And because I used it so seldom, I had a tendency to read it kind of quickly and not pay attention. And I've had a lot of clients do this too, and they would actually end up with duplicate numbers here. So what I'd have to do every time is I'd have to delete this one with a delete component, just like you would anything else, and copy it again and make sure I answer that question correctly, because you don't want to end up with these being the same number, because that just becomes the software just kind of, it sees it as this is both the exact same circuit. These are both the same overload. As long as you retag them, it will break it, but then you're still going to be going through and having to reconnect this stuff up. So it's kind of like, I don't know that you actually save any time doing that. So I usually don't bother myself. That's why I just always just read it. Now, I probably would have drawn this one and then copied it over instead of doing them both separate like that. 2 items like that, okay, repeats as fast as copying it. So there's nothing wrong to use copy circuit, though. You just got to watch, make sure you retag them. And this is the other thing. I don't know why on one lines it does this. It'll try to put a number when you do copy circuit on the dot. So you basically have to hide that attribute. So that's another reason I don't like it, is because I don't want to have to go through and hide that attribute. It puts a number on those dots when you do the copy circuit. I have no idea why. It's always done that for as long as I can remember, though. Anything else?
The other question that came in is there automation to perform power budgeting reviews? I think it's probably a different topic.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. If you could create a report that would do that, possibly, but out of the box, there's nothing budgeting built into it. I mean, I could add that information to components, and things like that in my catalog using those user fields, but it's all going to be creating customization type stuff in the catalog and the custom report.
Is there a way to take existing one-line drawings and connect them to schematics?
If they've got the symbols built in as one, if they're actual symbols like these are, to where, I can create the symbol, it's got all the correct attributes and things. You possibly could use some of these conversion tools, or is that the correct ones? The conversion tools, yeah, there may be something you could do with something here that would do it. My personal opinion is it's faster just to, create a symbol than to use those conversion tools in a instance like this. You could turn in for instance, if you had a one line that had a symbol on here, you could turn that symbol into one line symbol. The problem is the naming convention is probably not going to match, so you're going to have to rename them and then use something like swap update block option B, I believe it is. Yeah, update a block to swap out this block for the correct symbol, and then you could get some information over that way. Once you get it into where it's an actual AutoCAD component symbol for a one-line symbol, you could connect it up at that point. But it would be a little bit of work getting it in there originally. But once you got it done, it wouldn't be that difficult.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? All right, if there's not any other questions, I'll turn it back over to Ashley.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the presentation. This will conclude our broadcast. If you have additional questions, you can simply reply to the confirmation or reminder email you received from GoToWebinar, and we can get those to Rick or the appropriate party to get your questions answered. Once again, if you could take a few moments to fill out the short survey, we would appreciate it. It will just automatically pop up as we close down the session today. And otherwise, thank you for attending, everyone, and have a great day.
We do have one more
Oh,
question if you want me to answer. I just noticed pop up.
okay, go ahead. Sure.
Says the Circuit Builder spreadsheet demo was brief. What was the column for the 4.4 data that was copied? Basically, that was an ID column. If you went to the very top here, you see this one's called UI value, and this one is UI selection. So my guess is what they're used for is basically an ID number for the selection box. So when you select it, it says, I don't know if you've ever done a selection box like on a website or in a Basic or something like that, but you have to have an ID for each one. And so they're basically that's what they're used for. Because they go in 1, 2, 4, my assumption is it's a built one, kind of like the snaps in AutoCAD. It's using a bit code that can be added together, but I'm only guessing that based on the numbers they're using. And I've not see right here, you can see this one's 2, 4, 6, 8. Well, actually they're going in pairs, so it's not a bit code. I have no idea why they go in pairs, but each one is unique and it's a value, probably some type of ID for the selection boxes. Back to you, Ashley.
Okay, I do believe that you had a training slide, Rick, that you could share with everyone.
Thank you. I forgot all about that because it's a new thing we're doing. Basically, we do have training here on the books for AutoCAD Electrical if anybody's interested. For the new user training, we've got 3 classes coming up that are e-training. All of them are Eastern time in about a week or so, then right before Christmas, and there right at the end of January. And if you need any professional services and training for document management or simulation services, we are available for that.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Rick. And we will close down the session now. Thanks, everyone, for attending, and have a great day. Bye.